The new year is officially no longer new. Our free month-long trial of 2023 has expired, so we're in this for the long haul. But before we close the books on 2022, I want to go over some of the movies I've seen this year. Specifically, some of the absolute worst movies I've had the displeasure of paying money to go see. Now, going to the movies is an expensive pastime, so I was a bit more pick and choosy with which ones I went out to see this year. However, since these movies are also part of my regular review show, there are some movies that, no matter how bad reviews they get, you stick to it. You watch those movies, you suffer through them, and then you give them full reviews. With that in mind, here are 6 movies and 6 theatrical experiences that I wish I asked for my money back in 2022. Why 6? Because 6 3 times in a row is the mark of the devil, and you should stay the hell away from these movies. Now, I won't go into too much detail about these movies, as I'm planning to do videos on all of them. This is just a list. Number 6. Halloween Ends. If I'm being honest, I probably should have seen this one coming. I mean, the Halloween franchise is full of disappointing sequels. But this one is especially disappointing because it was hyped up to be the final battle between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. After this movie, Nick Castle and Jamie Lee Curtis would be done with the franchise. And it's such a massive letdown that I can't really give it away without discussing and going into spoilers. So just say that there's a reason why it's number 6 on my list, because the 6th Halloween movie is considered the worst of the franchise. But I think this one could be a strong contender too. Halloween 2018 was a great start, and Halloween Kills was a decent slasher movie, although I could see why people didn't like it. This one was barely a horror movie, much less a slasher movie. Michael Myers is missing in action for most of the damn thing. Michael Myers is one of the most, if not the most, iconic slasher villains in movie history. The original 1978 classic is the granddaddy that a lot of slasher films take inspiration from. To see it go out on such a weak note is a big letdown for any hardcore fan of the franchise. But who am I kidding? They'll probably reboot it in about 5 years' time. They need something for that 50th anniversary. Number 5. Uncharted. What do you get when you take a movie that's been in development hell for the better part of a decade and a half, you attach a recent rising star to play a character even if he looks nothing like him, then you get one of the other actors who was originally going to play said character to play a character that he also doesn't look like, you rush the movie through writers and directors, you fast track it, you spludge it out into theaters, and what do you get? You get Uncharted. A low-effort, by-the-numbers adventure pick that has none of the Uncharted flair. The Uncharted games are action movies in and of themselves. You just have to look at the story beats and the action set pieces, see what parts you could trim out or simplify for the runtime, and then you put it into theaters. Instant success. The fan film starring Nathan Fillion did a much better job of capturing the authenticity of the Uncharted games, and it had a fraction of the resources that Sony had. It picks and chooses elements of all 4 games in hopes to smash them together to create this sort of member berries trip. You just watch the Uncharted cutscenes and you get a better Uncharted movie. Number 4. Jurassic World Dominion. Another underwhelming conclusion to a legacy trilogy. That really seems to be the flavor of the month in Hollywood, isn't it? Halloween, Jurassic Park, Star Wars, all their legacy sequels tend to follow a formula of having a one great movie that breaks countless records, the second one that polarizes the fan base and is clearly a steep in decline, and the third one that struggles to get over the finishing line and wrap up the trilogy in a somewhat cohesive manner. What really sucks is that this is the first time since the original Jurassic Park that you have Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum all back for the final adventure, and you make it about bugs. You had a winning formula going for you at the end of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Why would you make it about these? There are things about this movie that I do appreciate, but when you're selling it as the epic conclusion to the 6-movie franchise, the movie that you got Sam Neill to come back, who only said he'd come back if it was the last one, this is what you wasted it on. Was it worth it? Apparently so, if we're getting another movie in the works. Number 3. Amsterdam. More like, damn, this movie sucked. Now, I'll be honest with you. I am not a David O. Russell fan. I've seen American Hustle and Silver Linings Playbook. I do admit he knows how to get good performances out of his actors. He may be a borderline psychopath when he does, but he gets the job done. So going into this movie, I was thinking we could get some cool characters and maybe a plot that's actually halfway interesting. The plot that sort of happens in the background is more interesting than the main plot where we follow these characters. There are fragments of a murder mystery / conspiracy going on, but it's so hastily scrapped together that you're left there wondering, what was that movie even about? And that is what you can more or less expect from a David O. Russell movie. Actors going for the Oscars while the plot meanders in the background. This movie probably represents the worst aspects of David O. Russell. Everything from the characters, the dialogue, the cinematography, it just reeks of artistic hubris. This is a prime example of why an auteur director sometimes needs to be told no. The creative choices are bland, boring, and if allegations that have come up against him are to be believed, then this could very well be the end of his career. What a pathetic movie to go out on. Number 2. Morbius. Yeah, believe it or not, there is a movie that I paid money to see in 2022 that is worse than Morbius. Where do I even begin with this one? It represents everything wrong with modern day superhero movies. CGI fights that are shot in darkness so you can't really make out what's going on, an actor who doesn't care about the role, a bad guy whose powers mirror that of Morbius. Seriously though, why wasn't Matt Smith Morbius? Matt Smith's performance is what Jared Leto should have been. So essentially, Matt Smith out Jared Leto'd Jared Leto. Maybe Jared Leto was playing it dead straight the entire time, and then they used takes where he was a bit more, haha, lighting up. If he was really hamming it up or just playing it straight to the point of ridicule, then I'd understand. But no, he's caught in the middle and it comes off as painfully mediocre. Looking at the trailer, there was definitely scenes that were supposed to be in the movie but cut out. There's probably entire subplots that never made it to the big screen. But would it really matter? I mean, the movie would have sucked either way. It's just a question of whether it would have sucked a little less or a little more. It's the most embarrassing excuse for a superhero film in the modern era since Fan 4-Stick. But because of the box office to budget ratio, it will probably get a sequel. Before we go on to my number 1 pick, let's look at some dishonorable mentions. You know, with the cast and the director and the style of movie they were going for, you'd think it'd be a fun 90s throwback. Instead, it's a literal eyesore to watch as the camera just moves and jumps and goes all over the place. Again, I love the actors who are in this, but they couldn't save this movie. You know, ever since Twilight, I feel as if werewolves and vampires have never gotten the proper respect that they deserve. When you think vampires and werewolves, everybody still thinks of Edward and Jacob. Now this movie wasn't that great. In fact, much like Twilight, it had its own unorthodox spin on werewolves. But it definitely treated them better than Twilight. Kenneth Branagh claims to be a fan of the source material, but between odd choices in lighting and cinematography and even performances, I'm not really feeling the love.
Lock the doors! The murderer is here and will stay here.
I like to coin a new phrase in Hollywood. Don't bullshit your way through a franchise. When you're planning out a trilogy, get the writers and directors all in one room, get all the finer details hammered out, and then start filming the first movie. Or in this movie's case, make sure you have your 5-movie story ready to go before you even start making the first one. Because otherwise, you get the 3rd movie that ends up becoming the unofficial end of a trilogy.
Correct. 3 points to Hufflepuff.
It's not the worst Liam Neeson movie I've seen this year, but it is definitely a far cry from his Taken days. Also, if you're marketing yourself as the director of a movie you made a decade and a half ago, it's probably a good time to take a good hard look at your career and where it's going.
We all have to die. What's important is what you do before you go.
Maybe this was the wrong movie to introduce myself to Ari Aster. I think I'm saying that right. Ari Aster? Yeah. But if any of his other movies are like this one, then he's definitely a pretentious blowhard.
One
The boys found this inside.
What do you think is on it?
I see one goddamn f***ed up horror picture.
And the number one absolute worst movie I saw in a theater in 2022 was...
Grandpa, are you a good guy?
I wanna be.
Blacklight. Now, I can do cheesy Liam Neeson action movies, whether they're just on Netflix or they're at the second run theater. Genuinely, I can have a good time with them. This one felt more like a DVD movie that was intended for someone like Bruce Willis, but he said no. And I had to ask myself, has Liam Neeson really gotten to that point? Has he sunken so far down that he's now doing one step above DVD movies? Somebody out there probably has dirt on him, because there is no way I can see him doing this movie other than the fact that he was blackmailed into doing it. The cinematography, the editing, the action sequences, the writing, every aspect on this movie fails. There's no big climatic showdown, there's no great action sequences. Heck, most of the action in this movie doesn't even feature Liam Neeson. Well, I guess I have no one to blame but myself. I thought it would be a decent action movie, but it ended up being garbage. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to do something. Something that no respectable movie reviewer should do. I'm going to use Rotten Tomatoes to support my argument that this is the worst movie of the year. Halloween Ends, 40%. Uncharted, 41%. Jurassic World Dominion, 29%. Amsterdam, 33%. Morbius, 16%. Blacklight, 11%. And if you need further proof, look at the IMDb scores. Yeah, I'd say Blacklight definitely deserves the title of worst movie of 2022. Or at least in my book, it was the worst movie that I paid money to see in a theater in 2022. In retrospect, I probably should have asked for my money back. So, there you have it. My 6 worst movies of 2022. Maybe you liked one of the movies I mentioned. Maybe one of the movies I mentioned is probably on your guilty pleasures. Whatever your thoughts are, leave them in the comments down below. Be sure to leave a like, as it will really help out the video in the algorithm. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification, because I got plenty of videos coming. I don't know how to end these types of videos, so have a good one.